All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite dark sorcerer here, and today I'd like to discuss the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Okay, now I've discussed this book several times with several of my videos now, so I thought I would take a moment and kind of just show it to you and kind of tell you a little bit about what I liked about it. All right, so this is actually the first complete translation of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Um, it is a introductory commemoratory by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and it's by Penguin Classics, the deluxe edition. Okay, and it looks like this. Okay, you can actually get this from Amazon, eBay. But keep in mind that it's not included with the essays that came separate. So this is just the main thing. Now, the thing that I liked about this particular book is it's almost like a story of the migration of the soul. Think of it more as the trans trans migration process from the time you're born, how you live your life, the information and the growth that and the hardships that you face throughout life, the obstacles that you've had to come over, and also the dying process. Okay, when you get sick, what happens? You know, what happens as you're dying? The complete necrosis of your cells, your blood not doing what it's supposed to, the organs shutting down, the pain and the suffering of just the dying process alone, but also think about the emotions, the feelings of, you know, what it's like to be going through that process of dying. It's that soul's journey from life to death. And if you think about it, I mean, if you've ever watched any of the videos on people who are dying, I've seen videos of people who have COVID-19 and they're gasping for breath. The doctors are starting to put them on, life support, put them under into a medically induced coma. And you can see and hear the fear, not only in their voice, but in their eyes as they're gasping for their next breath. This is what I'm talking about. That whole overall fear, because when you're dying, the only thing you can think of is what you're leaving behind. Okay, your friends, your family, your life, that type of thing. But in this sense, this book has been around for like 2,500 years. Goes back to the bars, or is it the doll aspect, the art of dying, and it's very awesome to read. This is the first translation into English. So, I mean, of course, I picked it up. I loved it. And this book here, see here, uh, this book here was published roughly around 2006, 2007, and around 2005, really, depending on where you are in the world. For an example, Great Britain 2005, United States of America, you know, um, the UK, USA 2006, 2007. the founding UK, let's see, Thepton Jinpa. Not really sure what the hell that is or who it is, but it was 2005. And then finally, the complete, and the copyright, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, 2005, all rights reserved. Okay, so I mean, it was actually pretty cool to see, just how far back this one actually goes. When was it translated? How was it done? But I found it interesting because we've all heard of the mandala. Okay, the mandala offerings. We've heard of the mandalas and all that stuff. But especially if you're into the occult. But here on page 17, you've actually got the mandala offering, which I thought was pretty cool. It goes down through the process. You have the prayer to the lineage teachers. You got prayer for the union with the spiritual teacher, entitled Natural Liberation Without Renunciation of the Three Poisons. That I actually enjoyed that one myself. That, as a necromancer and herbalist, I got to give it up for that chapter there. The root verses of the six intermediate states. Think of this one as the different states of the consciousness, and that's basically what it is. I mean, very the six stages of life and death. The dying process, and the context within that one is the cycle of the teachings, the circle of birth and death, and how it can be seen and composed within the six states. Very, very interesting. The introduction to the awareness, natural liberation through the naked perception. Now, I mean, you consider those who study things like thanatology, necrology, even. Um, it's very interesting to see how each stage affects not only the community but also the family members. And then when you get down into it, it's really affecting the individual going through that process. So this perception here really is interesting to me personally because of the fact that I've had so many people, die that I've been close to. My friends, my coven members, even people that were with my mother. I mean, just over the last 15 years, I can tell you that there's been at least four people that not like three, four people that she's been associated with. You know, um, Dying of cancer, dying of old age, dying of Parkinson's or whatever. It's different things. I mean, even through my own experiences in this. It's funny because I look back and starting at fourth grade, how many people, both friend and family, that I've lost to death in one form or another, either by suicide or by a house fire, accidental hanging, because they like to climb. And then on top of that, just mysterious deaths and, the whole can caboodle. So, I mean, you got like 30 years worth of death in your life. So, I mean, of course, you're going to go to necromancy and you're going to go to all these other, regions. So I mean, the cinnamon for the mind was something I enjoyed as well in this. And I thought I'd take a moment and kind of just read this one to you. And this is on page 41. As for this apparent and distinct phenomenon, which is called mind, in terms of existence, it has no inherent existence whatsoever. In terms of origination, it is the source of the diverse joys and sorrows of cyclic existence and nirvana. In terms of philosophical opinion, it is subject to opinions in accordance with the 11 vehicles. In terms of designation, It has an inconceivable number of distinct names. Some call it the nature of mind, the nature of mind itself. Some eternalists give it the name self. Pious attendants call it selflessness of the individual. Citamandrines call it mind. Some call it the perfection of discriminative awareness. Some call it the nucleus of the Sagata. Some call it the Great Seal. Some call it the unique seminal point. Some call it the expanse of reality. And some call it ground of all. And some call it ordinary, unfabricated consciousness. Okay? So when you think of the mind within the synonym aspect, it kind of gives you that conscious but unconscious and subconscious level. When I read the third book of Christopher Penziak called The Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft, he breaks down the mind into three sections, front, middle, and back, what he referred to as the shadow self. All the pain and the affliction that no matter how great or minor that we feel or deal with on a daily basis, you push to the back of the mind. Well, we'll deal with it later. You know what I'm saying? So here it's kind of interesting to see how you have three sections, but when you're going from top to bottom, you have seven different portions of the brain that deal with different aspects from control to consciousness, subconscious. Okay. It is said that men and women utilize anywhere between 5 to 10 percent of our brains on a given day. So that gives you roughly about 90% of the brain that is untapped. Just think about that for just a minute. Have you ever thought about the potential that you're capable of doing just with the mind alone? This entire chapter gets you thinking on things, not just that book that I named off by Christopher Penziak, but it's very, very interesting because you're going through the observations related to examining the nature of the mind. You're dealing with the awareness as views, meditation, conduct, and results. I mean, this is just a small portion of just the reflection of the mind. So I mean, you go into the next chapter and I'm going to just flip back here real fast because I went past the page. The spiritual practice entitled Natural Liberation of Habitual Tendencies. This one was actually very, very interesting because as a practitioner who does ceremonial and ritualized practices, this one spoke to me. So I mean, you'd have to read the entire thing just to get um, proportional grasp of what this book is about and what it can actually teach you. The branch of invitation, the branch of paying homage, the branch of making offerings, the confession of negativity, the sympathetic rejoicing, the wheel of the sacred teachings. Does this sound, kind of like a little bit of paganism and Wicca to you? The wheel of the year, the cycles of life and death and birth and rebirth. Well, that's basically what it is, if you think about it. The branch of requesting the Buddhas not to enter nirvana. The purification process, the main practice. I mean, you can go on and on and on just on that, but when you get further into the book, and I'm going to just kind of scroll forward here, you get into a lot of different prayers. You get into a lot of different, almost like poems and stuff. But on page 270, you have what is called the conclusion of the introduction to the intermediate state of the time of death and the intermediate state of reality. Now, when you get to this point, you should have a fair understanding of thanatology. Okay. For those of you who do not know what thanatology is, it was created around 1920s. Okay. I want to say it was around 1917, 1920s area. But it didn't become popular until around the 1970s when it became associated and recognized as part of the medical community. Think of hospice, CNAs, type thing. That's basically what it is. And think of counseling, priesthoods, and stuff like that, because this is where it really plays into effect with the patient, but also with the families and the communities, not just those who are dealing with death and dying, the dying and the dead, those who have to witness the final gasp of life. That is this is something that was created by a German slash Russian philosopher, and it was actually something that was kind of interesting because he took it from two different perspectives, and it became very much popular. And even today, there are very, very few individuals who study and practice as a practicing thanatologist. So I would recommend that if you're interested in this aspect and you get into necromancy, delve into this book. Okay? Because this chapter alone, this portion here is something that is mind blowing. I highly recommend it. So I mean, the colophon, for an example, that's Colophon. The teaching was brought forth in secret by the accomplished master Karma Lingpa, the eldest son of the accomplished master Nindya Nengyi from the sacred place of Mount Campador. I probably just butchered those names, but yeah, and I do apologize if I did. Which resembles a dancing god and is located on the banks of the river Surden. The master Karma Lingpa entrusted its transmitted precepts and authorization to his son. This succession fell in turn to his son, Guru Suri Kendra, and so forth. And it's very, very intriguing to see all of this stuff. And I mean, even if you go into further entrances, say to page, what is this? 381, you have the Appendix 1, Peaceful and Wrathful Deities, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This portion I actually like because it actually puts you in contact with the ideals of vengeful spirits and spirits who can try to do what is known as a hostile takeover of the vessel. So, I mean, when you get into Tibetan books of the dead, like the Zen priests, the monks and all that, and getting into reincarnation, you can be reincarnated into a bug or something evil or something good, depending on your view and how you lived your life. Now, you'd really have to study that entire region just to gain a footnote of what I'm discussing here. But the point is that thanatology, the journey of life and death, plays a huge part. I mean, Elvis Levi recognized this. Francis Barrett recognized this. Okay. Even the Egyptians, the land of Magi, okay, recognized that the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the sorcery of the priesthood, the Shem priests, knew about this stuff. It wasn't just ceremonial or ritual. They had different classes. They had different perspectives on duties and responsibilities, not just the learning. I mean, when you look at the Shem priests, just out of example, okay, out of from the Egyptian perspective, you had one person's job was to cleanse the body, meaning wash the body. You had somebody else that was responsible for beginning the mummification process. You had somebody else doing the medical aspects of removing the four main vital organs that they believed that the individual would need if they ever returned to this realm. Okay. So I mean, and then you had the prayer, somebody reading of the book, somebody responsible for the upkeep of the temple, set of priests, dealing with the public. It's not like today where you have, like, say, for example, if we go with the JCI, you have cardinals. You have the Pope, you have the cardinals, you have the bishops, then you have the priests, and then you have the reverends, and so forth, all the way down. No, this is something completely different. Even in an ordinary church, you have the bishop, the pastor, and then you have the reverend, and then you have the security. Okay. They're called ushers. So I mean, even today you still see that those responsibilities. So I mean, even in Tibetan, the bars for Dal, the art of dying, it's not just a study and practice, it's the understanding of the soul, understanding the separation of the physical and the spiritual nature, just to begin your journey into the next world. This book, by far, is one of the best that I've had the honor of owning. You know, and it's called, like I said, it's called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it's very, very. I don't know if you can read the side here, but I want you to get kind of an understanding here. Let me see if I can't clear that up. Got a little bit of a shine here. All right, how's that? Okay. When I first got into necromancy a couple years ago, on a full-time dedicated path working, like I said in my last video, I delved into Lucifer Raphael's book, Christian Day's book, The Witch's Book of the Dead, and Forbidden Rites of Necromancy and stuff like that. I even delved even further into the Munich manuscripts. I delved into the Cabal aspects of it, and I just started doing my own research, my own knowledge, and it led me into medical. It led me into the various different distinct formations of what is known about necromancy today, such as necromancy as a necro meaning corpse, dead, vigor mortis, kind of like the German lick or the Russian glick, okay, cadaver, even in European, so you got necro, and then you got the art of black magic, you get into the Roman aspects and you got nigromancy. Negro meaning black and mancy meaning, you know, the art of or practice of. Okay, so I mean, you really got to delve into this type of aspect to understand. And then when you go back into ancient Greek, you have Nikia, okay, which is similar to both shamanism and necromancy in itself, but it deals more with spiritualism. So, like I said, when you get into any form of sorcery, I would highly recommend going world over just to find the commonalities and everything, not just the spirits and deities. This one here happens to touch on a lot of them. So, I mean, it's something that you may want to delve into. All right. With that said, have a good day, good night. For me, it's roughly about 9:13 p.m. Damn, where the hell did this day go? Yes, it's what happens when you get your face stuck in a book. But okay, it may not be your cup of tea, but it is mine. All right. I love to read. I love to study. Okay. And I love to perform rituals and magic. So, I mean, that's the warlock in me. That's the necromancer in me. That's the Maramberos in me. So I mean, whatever way you look at it, you know, I am what I am. Love me, hate me, I don't give a shit. But my point is this: you got to respect the material, and you got to get into it to understand on a full time basis. It'll benefit you to and behoove you to learn for yourself. All right. So have a good day, good night, and until next time.